Roberts asserted that the earth has pillars and hangs on nothing. He cited 1 Samuel 2:8, Hannah's prayer, because she says, "For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world." Pillars, or Matsuk number 4690, is used in 5 different ways in the Bible. And here, in this case, its use is symbolic of strength and support. Psalm 75:3 is another example, according to the HarperCollins Bible Dictionary, of poetic and liturgical language being used, and Roberts not factoring the form into his analysis. The other 2 citations are from Job 9:6 and 26:7. And here, Roberts has failed to consider the context. In 9:6, Job is having an argument with Bildad about Torah and is quoting a psalm. By the time we get 26:7, Job is ranting and sassing Bildad. He's being sarcastic. And another thing, Job is in the wrong anyway. That's the whole point of the book. Next, Roberts claimed Earth has a face, a geometric flat surface, and then does the same with water and sky, citing a total of 34 verses. I went through every one of them, so you don't have to. Richard Hammond. Alright. Face is pane, and is paired with other words like ap and ayin. And it is very common, and especially used in idioms. Therefore, he's taking idioms seriously. Ever see Robin Hood Men in Tights? Robin calls for attention by quoting Shakespeare and Julius Caesar, and when he got to "Lend me your ears," the crowd, taking him seriously, popped off their ears and threw them at Robin. That's like what Roberts did here. Let me interject. In Hebrew, many words have double or symbolic meanings. Easy example is to read the Song of Solomon. That's not his hand that he's putting into her lock, if you catch my drift. And her garden or her channel is really her, and he is enjoying her fruit. Context and translation matters. Switching to the New Testament, an example is the number of the beast. What is it? From the Latin, we get 666, and that's what most people think. However, from the Koine Greek, we get 616. These languages have double meanings to words and numbers, and this cannot be ignored. Roberts did the same exact thing in his next claim, "The Earth Has Ends," citing 40 verses. Now, I am quite vexed because I did due diligence checking every single verse, and the inexperience here was worse than I thought. Anyways, the common idiom, "to the ends of the earth." How often have you heard someone vow to chase someone to the ends of the earth? This is an idiom that is actually translated over the millennia and through different languages and still makes sense and mean the same thing. Roberts must think we're stupid. I would like to highlight Job 38:12-14 as an example. This pericope references dawn seizing the end or edge of the earth. Well, on a spherical earth, dawn arrives at the distant horizon, end or edge of a person's point of view in a fixed position. And since we are on this one, I would like to note how it describes the earth taking shape like clay under a seal. This is more applicable to either a disk or a sphere, but it may be saying more about Earth's rotation or its manufacture than its shape. He did it again with his next claim about the idiom, the four corners of the earth. We still use this one today. It's an idiom referring to the most distant parts of the earth. In context, the idiom usage is implied, and the Hebrew word for corner, kanaf, number 3671, meaning wings or extremities, and it is used figuratively every time it is used in the Old Testament. And if Roberts really wants to take it literally, the Interlinear Bible says, the four wings of the earth. So, will Roberts now assert that the earth has four wings? Or will he recognize the figurative nature of phrases? I gotta highlight something else here. He cited 7 pericopes. 4 are the idiom, but the others, now I triple checked the citations to be sure. Jeremiah 9:26 and 25:23, Jeremiah is talking about the corners of foreigners' beards. And in Ecclesiastes 1:6, Kohelet is talking about the winds coming from all over that go round and round. I have to ask, is this sneakiness or inexperience? Oh, and yet again with the next claim. Who'da thunk it? This claim is the sun moves, not the earth. When you check most of the passages he cited, they are just describing sunrise. We talk and we refer to sunrise even today because it is an expression. Roberts is projecting, but I'm a professional. So here's due diligence by the numbers. In the words of a mouthy merc, let's count them down. Okay, we got this. 37 Old Testament passages using Shemesh, number 8121, meaning sunrise. Now we got 5 Old Testament passages, and it's still using Shemesh in there, but it is Marak Shemesh, meaning sun, sun rising, sun, and it's referring to the direction. Next, we go over to the New Testament. 4 New Testament passages using Helios, number 2246, and it just means sun. 3, we get a little bit more formal here. So it's Shemesh Mirash, 4217, 8121, and 1886.1. That's the. Now it's referring to sunrise and sun, and it's referring to it as the time of day. And then, for some reason, we have 2 Old Testament passages using Cherek, Cherek, number 2272, and its meaning it's sun, itch, or any eruptive skin rash. And I find it funny that he included that one. And I remind you that he keeps claiming that he studied the Hebrew and Greek and did all this work, and I don't know about this one, buddy. Anyway, going through the list in the Strong's Concordance, I notice a pattern. And so I am fairly certain that Roberts just did a keyword search for sun and rise and sun and down because of what he didn't cite. Very similar passages that describe the same motion but didn't specifically contain the English words rise or down. Roberts did not differentiate between the literal sunrise and sundown, denoting time, and the figurative or the metaphorical. For example, Jeremiah 15:9, a prophecy about the downfall of Jerusalem and the southern kingdom of Judah. Or Micah 3:6a, a prophecy about the end of prophecy. Or Ephesians 4:26, where the Apostle Paul advises the Ephesians, do not let the sun go down on your anger. It is a common expression used every day, and the non-literal uses, I can't even with this guy. There is no confusion by any rational person as to the meaning, and again, I question Roberts' integrity, especially because he's trying to make money off of this. You padding the verse count, bro? I think you're padding the verse count. He then went off on another combative and manipulative aside, more akin to a cult leader than an actual Christian. And the whole thing is wrong because of his failure at form criticism, not recognizing or considering parts of speech like simile, metaphor, allusion, idioms, and expressions. All right, let's get through the poppycock so we can deal with the real issue. Roberts claimed that the sun stopped moving, citing 4 pericopes. Isaiah 60:20. It's a metaphor, and it's saying that God would be the city's light. That speaks to my congregational heritage, reminding me of Jonathan Edwards' treatise called A Supernatural and Divine Light. And that's why when you go into a congregational church built before 1900, the walls are all pastel, and most of the wall is taken up by windows to let as much of the supernatural and divine light in. Anyway, all right. Job 9:7. Job is talking about how God is greater than some rando off the street. Joshua 10:12-14. It's explicitly quoting the book of Jasher, which is not in the Bible, and it's poetic, talking about the perception of time. Habakkuk 3:11. It's a second-hand account of the prophet's prayer, and it's part of a theophanic report. And those divine things can be really difficult to adequately describe. Then he cited 2 Kings 28-11. The sun went backwards one time, and it was only to authenticate the prophet Isaiah's prophecy to King Hezekiah. Remember the Deuteronomical test? And so this is about the deliverance of Jerusalem. And to be clear, I meant deliverance as to save the city from destruction, and not that someone was going to actually deliver the city on a plate or in a pizza box. Because Roberts takes figurative expressions literally. For the Three Musketeer fans, I do have Athos. He is finally starting to behave himself, lying down just off camera, though I think Porthos is about to start some trouble over here with probably Bailey. Anyway, alright, so Roberts then got to stretching real hard, claiming that the moon has its own light. It's an expression for pity's sake. Alright, Genesis 1:6 is the unique pericope, but it describes the moon regulating light, not creating it, and it's clearly calendrical in its purpose. The rest of the cited pericopes are all prophecies, written in the poetic prophetic language, and either Robert's mendacity or ineptitude is on display again. He cited Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, and there are 2 types of usages. 1, predicting doom for Babylon, or 2, describing God's glory, repeating similar phrases. So, which rolls off the tongue better and sounds prettier? Moonshine, or no longer reflects light from the sun. See, prophets had a way with words and used them to get people to listen to them and get their messages across. A beautiful and artful turn of phrase is more likely to be listened to. For example, recall the movie Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There was a bit in it about Vogon poetry, and how it was considered torture to listen to the poetry of such an officious and bureaucratic race. It was ranked 3rd worst in the galaxy. Would you like to listen to that? Or would you prefer Emily Dickinson? How about opera? Which would you prefer? Sarah Brightman and Andrea Bocelli? Or Klingon opera? So that's why I think it's prevarication. The perfidy and bungling comes from the New Testament citations, because they're all quoting the Old Testament selections he already cited. All right, and he's not being upfront about it. That is the problem. All right, when you do that, now when you do what he did, it is our industry standard to be clear that it is quoting. One reason besides the honesty issue is that when the New Testament quotes the Tanakh, it is not the Masoretic text, the original Hebrew, but the Septuagint, the Greek translation of it. And while today when we read the Old Testament, when we just open it up and read it, we see the Masoretic text, not the Septuagint. All right, so there are differences. Professionals know this, but when you are presenting that sort of thing to laity, you should tell them. And not that I consider Roberts a professional, to be clear, but he is cosplaying as one. Again, Porthos, no, stop, don't do that. He's not happy with me. Again, the same stunt. At least he is consistent. The same stunt with the claim about a high altitude perspective. Daniel 4:11 is part of a prophetic dream that King Nebuchadnezzar is recounting to Daniel or Belteshazzar using metaphorical language, which is made clear by the lines asking for interpretation. Then, in 4:20, stop giggling, is Daniel reporting back to King Nebuchadnezzar the results of his interpretation of what he was told to him back in 4:11. And the meaning wasn't about the earth, it was about the stature of King Nebuchadnezzar anyway. The same instance counted twice. Did Roberts not notice, or did he hope that we wouldn't? He should have, or would have if he had actually read the verses around the pericope. Or maybe he wanted to hide the mystical and unrelation to flat earth nature of these citations. It is curious that Roberts didn't cite Isaiah 40:20 here. But let's deal with it anyway, because the real scholars have. Isaiah describes God sitting enthroned, looking down on the perfect circle of the earth. Now, the flat earthers would tell you, oh, yeah, that's got to be that has to be a flat earth in there because it's just a circle. However, now only a sphere looks like a circle when seen from any angle. And I have my Ingress XFAC coin here, so to represent the flat earth, the flat disk earth. Now, when we go from any other angle, you'll see it's not a circle anymore. Then there is Matthew 4:8, the temptation of Christ. Is Robert serious? Two beings with divine powers go high up, and does he not think that they couldn't see to the other side? It does not preclude that they were in motion, orbiting the earth, I recall a modern depiction of the temptation that was like this, but I forgot where I saw it or what it was called, what it was in. But the two of them were having the back and forth while the Earth rotated below them, or it could be that they were orbiting the Earth while the Earth did its normal 15 degree per hour drift. Thanks, Bob. Because it is a matter of perspective, with the camera holding on the pair. Next claim. Hell is a bottomless pit at the heart of the flat disk Earth. He inserted the flat disk part, so he projected flat Earth absurdity into this. He cited 4 pericopes in Revelation. Each said the same idiomatic phrase that has nothing to do with a supposedly flat Earth. He is stretching to get to the confirmation bias. You padding the verse count, bro? I think you're padding the verse count. Claim. Everyone sees Jesus, citing Revelation 1:7. Okay, first, it's an allusion back to the prophet Daniel in the Old Testament. Next, does Robert think that Jesus is not able to make himself visible to everybody no matter what, if he had to? I mean, projecting human limitations onto divine powers? All right, and for some reason, Roberts cited Revelation 21:15-17, which describes New Jerusalem as a huge cube. I have a cube. Oh, forgot. Like a huge cube. I don't know why he cited it. I mean, it reminded me not just of that. It reminded me of a Borg cube, though, or Umber's Cuba. Next, some more of a flirt forcing his own definitions onto something that they have misunderstood and making a hash of it. An example of the Oakley Criteria. Here, Roberts highlighted references to breadth, which is the width of an object. But Roberts seems to think it means spread out flat. In doing my due diligence, I looked up what breadth meant, and the example given to illustrate the definition was a boat, which isn't, flat. But that hasn't stopped him so far from being inaccurate. Alright, Genesis 13:17. Which is a reference to a specific area, and if you go back to verse 15, you will see, you'll see that they're talking about that specific area and not the entire earth. Hey, Porthos. All right, Job 38:18. It's part of God scolding Job for 4 whole chapters, putting him in his place, that telling him that God has a lot of stuff on God's mind, and this pericope is the equivalent of you think you're so smart, you think you know everything? Isaiah 8:8 is a part of a prophetic sign saying that the Euphrates, which represents Assyria, will flood over Judah, which means invasion of Judah by Assyria. All right, but God will protect an area in the same sense as the earlier reference from Genesis. Isaiah 42:5 was cited for Roberts' assertion that spread out the earth is a proof of a flat earth. Again, spread out can be any shape. Ever watch Ace of Cakes? Duff and Jeff and the others, they would routinely spread out the fondant on many different shapes, including balls. All right. If it isn't properly spread out, then it would bunch and tear. So yeah, this goes beyond semantic stretching to semantic torture. Again, meeting the Oakley Criteria, as well as failing to recognize yet again the poetic nature of prophetic language. And then Revelation 29, which describes the gathering of the bad guys from all over, like in Lord of the Rings when Sauron gathered his armies to descend upon Gondor before continuing on to Middle-earth. I don't know, man. I don't know what he's getting at. Let me tag in here. The next claim is interesting. It's still wrong, and Roberts was being disreputable again, but it is more interesting than the rest of his rubbish. Roberts said that the pericope describes the voice of creation going out on a line through all the earth. Now, there is a conflict between the translations that the English is based on, specifically the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew, the Vulgate, that's Jerome's Latin translation of the Septuagint, and the Masoretic text, that's the original Hebrew, and the Syriac. So there are two versions of this text. One, the Vulgate and the Syriac says, "Yet their line goes out through all the earth." And the Masoretic and the Septuagint says, "Yet their voice goes out through all the earth." So what Roberts claimed was actually more an amalgam of the two versions, and therefore warped the pericope to meet his flat earth agenda. And on top of his underhanded fabrication, he also misapprehended the point, which was to describe the paradoxical way the knowledge of God is passed on, transmitted without speaking words in the customary way.